Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Gresham. I'm with the Wealth Builders, and we're going to talk about pairs and sessions this afternoon. All right. So, there are 8 major currencies, all right, or seven. Yeah, 7 major currencies. You got the US dollar, the Great British Pound, the Euro, the Swiss franc, the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, and the New Zealand dollar. All right. And so within the chat groups, you'll hear us say like UJ, AU. And so we're basically just abbreviating it to the first letter. Um, and then sometimes like we'll say uh, U Swiss and then UCAD because they start with the same letter. And so you hear things like that, all right? But there are 7 major currencies. There are 50 currency pairs, but there are 7 major pairs. And what makes a major pair is the fact that it contains the US dollar. And that's simply because the US dollar is the most traded currency within the Forex market. All right, so you got what we call the EU or the euro against the American dollar. And then we have UJ, which is USD JPY, the American dollar versus Japanese yen. We got GU, Great British Pound versus the US dollar. We got U Swiss, which is the US dollar versus Swiss franc. UCAD, the American dollar versus the Canadian dollar. AU, which is my favorite pair. It's a Australian dollar against the US dollar, and then NU, which is New Zealand dollar versus the American dollar. All right, so you'll pick it up soon enough. Make sure you write down these 7 major pairs because they may want to be a pair that you trade. And then there's minor pairs. All right. So a minor pair is a currency pair that's not associated with the US dollar. So if it doesn't contain the US dollar, it's considered a minor pair. And they're referred to as minor currency as it crosses in the general population. And so the most widely traded minor pairs are pairs that contain the Great British Pound, the Euro, and the Japanese yen. So we have EG or Euro versus Great British Pound, EJ, Euro versus the yen, GJ, which is the pound versus the yen, GCAD, the pound versus the Canadian dollar, CJ, which is Swiss franc versus the yen, EA, the euro versus the American Australian dollar, and then NJ, which is New Zealand dollar and the Japanese yen. I know I just rolled up, but they're on the screen. So definitely write these down. These are the minor pairs. And then we have the exotic pairs. I don't mean exotic cars. An exotic pair is comprised of a major currency. So we already mentioned the 7 major currencies, and then they're paired off with the currency of a developing country. But exotic pairs are not traded as often as major or minor pairs, but they do move. Some move quite quickly. And so we have the euro versus Turkish lira. We have the US dollar versus the Hong Kong dollar, Japanese yen versus New England krone, New Zealand dollar versus Singapore dollar, Great British Pound versus South African Rand, and the Australian dollar and Mexican peso. I have not mentioned all of the pairs. There's so many out there. Like I said, there's 50 of them. Okay, and then there's also 12 indices. And we're not going to really cover the indices because definitely want you guys to get into the let's see, the Forex blueprint before we start talking about indices. Once you can wrap your head around regular currency pairs, it's going to be easy for you to wrap your head around indices. All right. And so what are the best pairs to trade? It really depends on your trading style, your appetite for risk and overall experience as an online trader. And so it may shift over time. You may start with a few pairs and shift over to others. There is technically no best pair per se, but if you're a newcomer, if you're new to Forex, we advise that you stick to the major pairs until you become more comfortable enough in minor and exotic pairs. I I'm about 2 years in, and I started trading with my first exotic pair, and it moves kind of crazy. And so, if I'm not sure about the trade, I typically won't, until I get more comfortable with it. But um, I trade one major pair, I trade one indice, and then I have an exotic pair that I'm currently learning about. So we recommend that you pick anywhere from 3 to 5 pairs just to start studying, start back testing with, and we'll explain what those, what back testing is and how you can test out, the pairs that you want to trade. But figuring out what pairs you trade is highly linked to the sessions. And so there are 4 sessions within the forex market. We have the Sydney, the Tokyo, the London, and the New York. As it's Sydney, Australia, Tokyo, Japan, London, and then of course New York. But historically, the forex market has 3 peak trading sessions. We have the Asian session, which is related to Tokyo, and is opens up at 11 p.m. and it closes at 8 a.m. GMT time. So and then for the European session, which is associated with London, it opens at 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. GMT time. And then North American, New York City, which is open from noon to 8 p.m. GMT time. So for me, I live here in Detroit, which is the same time zone as Atlanta and New York City. And so the markets typically open at 5 p.m. Sunday, my time, all right, which is like 7 a.m. In Sydney, all right. And so basically, you need to compare your time zone against GMT to figure out when your session. So once you figure out what times you're going to be available to trade, it's going to help dictate which pairs you pick. All right. And so that's what I said. We recommend you study between 3 to 5 pairs. And so just for example, so I trade AUD USD. That was the first pair that I studied. And it's this yellow color. For those who are colorblind, I apologize. I am so very sorry. All right. And so we have, as you can see, GMT time, when it first starts off, the best time to trade GU is around 8 a.m. GMT time. And then we have between 11 and 4, so 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. GMT time. All right. And then it kind of drops off. So let's say, you want to probably start trading between 5:30 and close out your trades by 2 p.m. GMT time. All right. And so if this is 5 p.m. for me and I'm trading AU is typically live around these two times. All right. So do your research, figure out when your pair, like what time frame, what sessions you want to trade. If you're like, for me, when I first got started, I was still working my 9 to 5. And so I could only trade the London session and the Tokyo session because I was working. I was taking, I was in sessions. I was in meetings during the New York session, so I couldn't trade those hours. But now, I work for myself, and so I can trade whenever I want. And so I typically trade during the crossover between London and the New York session. All right. And so that's basically all that you need to know. Definitely do your research. You know, the educators, they all have their particular pairs. Like I said, you want to choose between 3 and 5. If you find one that you particularly like or one that you don't like, swap it out with a new one. But there are indices that a lot of us cover, like gold. We trade against the New York Stock Exchange. And so we'll talk more about that in the Forex Blueprint.